Kavya Sharma's last text message was sent at 11:54 p.m. Please stop. 25 minutes later, the 20-year-old UCLA student would be dead, killed by the same man who had promised to save her from poverty, but instead became her executioner. If you're fascinated by the dark secrets hidden behind America's golden promises, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because this story will expose how quickly dreams can turn deadly when survival meets obsession. But let's go back to where it all began. The first time Kavya Sharma stepped onto UCLA's sprawling campus, the California sun felt like a blessing on her skin. It was August 2024, and the 20-year-old mechanical engineering student from Mumbai carried nothing but a worn backpack, a heart full of ambition, and exactly $847 in her checking account. Her mother, Sunita, had sold her gold bangles to buy Kavya's plane ticket. "Make us proud, Beta," she had whispered at Mumbai's airport, pressing a small silver pendant in her daughter's palm. "Show America what our Indian girls can achieve." Those words echoed in Kavya's mind as she navigated the maze of registration lines, dormitory assignments, and orientation sessions that mark her first week in Los Angeles. Everything was bigger, brighter, and infinitely more expensive than she had imagined. A simple meal at the campus cafeteria cost more than her family spent on groceries for 3 days back home. The textbooks for her advanced calculus course alone devoured $400 of her precious savings. Within 2 weeks, her optimistic budget calculations had crumbled like paper in the rain. Kavya's roommate, Sarah Chun, was a second-year student from San Francisco whose casual spending habits became a daily reminder of the vast economic divide that separated American students from someone like Kavya. Sarah thought nothing of ordering $20 sushi dinners or buying a new laptop when her old one ran slowly. "You should get the premium meal plan," Sarah suggested cheerfully, not understanding that Kavya was already surviving on ramen noodles and free coffee from the library. The food court has amazing Thai fusion. By October, Kavya's financial situation had become desperate. Her partial scholarship covered tuition and basic housing, but Los Angeles's crushing cost of living consumed everything else. She walked 40 minutes to save on bus fare, wore the same 3 outfits in rotation, and learned to time her grocery shopping around the markdown schedules at nearby stores. Her video calls home became exercises in careful deception. "Everything is wonderful, Mama," she would say, adjusting her laptop's angle to hide the pile of unpaid bills on her desk. "My professors say I'm their brightest student." The truth was more complicated. Kavya was indeed brilliant. Her professors marveled at her intuitive understanding of complex engineering principles. But brilliance didn't pay rent. While her classmates networked at expensive coffee shops and joined study groups that met in trendy restaurants, Kavya found herself increasingly isolated. She was too proud to admit her struggles and too exhausted from working double shifts at the campus library to maintain the social connections that might have helped her feel less alone. The isolation was perhaps worse than the poverty. Kavya would sit in her shared dorm room, listening to Sarah's casual phone conversations about weekend trips to Santa Barbara or shopping excursions to Beverly Hills, and feel like she was watching life through thick glass. She belonged to numerous WhatsApp groups for Indian students, but the conversations often centered around expensive social events or internships that required unpaid work, luxuries she couldn't afford. Slowly, imperceptibly, she began to retreat from the community she had hoped would become her second family. The breaking point came on a rainy November evening when Kavya's debit card was declined while buying groceries. She stood in line at the campus market, holding a basket containing mac and cheese, instant coffee, and generic brand cereal, watching other students pile their carts with organic produce and imported snacks. The cashier, a kind older woman named Maria, tried the card 3 times before shaking her head sympathetically. "I'm sorry, honey. Do you have another form of payment?" Kavya's face burned with shame as she put the groceries back and walked out into the drizzling night. She sat on a bench outside the engineering building, rain soaking through her thin jacket, and finally allowed herself to cry. Not just for the embarrassment, but for the crushing weight of expectations she could no longer carry. Her mother's sacrifices, her family's hopes, her own dreams of success. All of it felt impossibly heavy as she shivered in the California cold. That night, alone in her dorm room, while Sarah was at a sorority party, Kavya opened her laptop and began searching for solutions. Part-time jobs that fit around her rigorous class schedule were scarce and poorly paid. Student loans would take weeks to process, and she needed help immediately. Her browsing history that night told the story of increasing desperation. Emergency financial aid for international students, quick money for college students, survival tips for broke grad students. It was during one of these late-night search sessions that Kavya first encountered the world that would ultimately destroy her. Hidden in the depths of Reddit forums and anonymous blog posts, she found discussions about arrangements, relationships where wealthy older individuals provided financial support in exchange for companionship. At first, she was disgusted by the concept, but as her situation grew more dire, as her mother's proud voice echoed from their last video call, and as her academic dreams teetered on the edge of financial collapse, the idea began to seem less unthinkable. The decision that would seal her fate was made not in a moment of reckless abandon, but in the quiet desperation of a brilliant young woman who had run out of conventional options. Kavya created her first profile on a discreet arrangement website on November 15, 2024, using the pseudonym Naya, and describing herself as a graduate student seeking mentorship and support. She told herself it was temporary, just until she could get back on her feet. She convinced herself that she was smart enough, strong enough, to maintain control over whatever relationship might develop. She had no way of knowing that 200 miles away in a Century City penthouse, a man named Marcus Reed was scrolling through profiles, looking for someone exactly like her, young, vulnerable, and desperate enough to accept his particular brand of generosity. Within 48 hours, he would send her a message that seemed like salvation, but was actually the first step toward her destruction. Marcus Reed's message arrived in Kavya's inbox at 2:47 a.m. on November 17th, marked with a small blue verification badge. "Hello, Naya." It began, respectful and intriguing. "I was drawn to your profile because you seem like someone with real substance and ambition. I'm a successful businessman who appreciates intelligence above all else. Perhaps we could meet for coffee this week? I'd love to hear about your studies and how I might support your academic journey." Unlike the dozens of crude messages flooding her inbox, Marcus's communication felt different, almost paternal. His profile painted the picture of a distinguished 52-year-old real estate developer with silver hair, kind eyes, and an impressive portfolio of luxury properties. Most importantly, he explicitly mentioned his desire to mentor and financially support a deserving young woman pursuing higher education. Their first meeting was at a trendy Santa Monica cafe. Kavya spent her last $15 on a thrift store dress and took 2 buses to arrive 15 minutes early. When Marcus walked in at exactly 2 p.m., she was struck by how imposing he seemed in person. Tall, well-dressed in an expensive navy blazer, he carried himself with confident authority that made her feel acutely young and inexperienced. Over expensive lattes, Marcus proved engaging. He asked thoughtful questions about her engineering program, research interests, and career goals. "It must be incredibly difficult," he said, leaning forward with apparent concern, "managing such a demanding academic load while worrying about finances. That's a burden no bright young woman should carry alone." Before leaving, Marcus handed Kavya a small wrapped box containing a delicate Tiffany bracelet. "Just a little something to show appreciation for a delightful afternoon," he smiled. "Looking forward to our friendship." Their second meeting was at an upscale Beverly Hills restaurant. Marcus picked her up in his gleaming BMW, and Kavya felt simultaneously thrilled and nervous as classmates watched her slide into the luxury vehicle. During dinner, he was charming and attentive, paying a check that could have covered her groceries for 2 months without glancing at the total. As they walked to his car afterward, Marcus casually mentioned he had taken care of a small matter for her. Her phone buzzed with a banking notification. $2,000 had appeared in her account, with a memo reading from a friend. "Marcus, I can't accept this," Kavya protested, though mentally calculating how many problems the money would solve. "It's too much." "Think what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying a slight edge. "That you're taking advantage? Naya, I see how you struggle, how you pretend everything's fine. Let me help you." That's what friends do. The way he said friends made it clear their relationship had shifted into territory she hadn't consciously agreed to enter. But with $2,000 in her account and his expectant gaze, she found herself nodding. Thank you. I'll pay you back. Marcus's laugh was warm but unsettling. Pay me back. Sweetheart, that's not how this works. I'm investing in your future. All I ask is your time and attention. Is that really so unreasonable? Over the following weeks, their arrangement settled into a pattern both comfortable and increasingly restrictive. Marcus texted morning and evening, sent flowers twice weekly, and arranged lavish dates. The gifts were beautiful, but came with subtle expectations. He began expressing preferences about her clothing, asking detailed questions about her schedule, classmates, and free time. By December, Marcus's financial support had become a lifeline. Regular deposits covered not just basic needs, but allowed unprecedented comfort. She sent money home for the first time, lying about a prestigious scholarship. Her mother's pride made the deception feel almost worthwhile. But comfort had a price. Marcus expected undivided attention, growing irritated when she checked her phone or mentioned other commitments. He had opinions about her friends, study habits, and academic choices. You're too talented for group projects, he'd say. Focus on individual excellence. The first real warning came during their New Year's Eve celebration at his penthouse. As midnight approached, his behavior became possessive. I want you to depend on me completely, he said, pulling her close as fireworks exploded outside. Let me take care of everything. The kiss that followed was hungry and demanding. When Kavya tried to pull away, his grip tightened. Don't be shy, sweetheart, he murmured. After everything I've done for you, surely you can show me appreciation. That night, lying in his expensive sheets, Kavya realized she had crossed a line for which there might be no return. Everything in her life now belonged to Marcus as much as to her. And Marcus believed that meant she belonged to him too. January brought the kind of suffocating Los Angeles winter that traps desperation under gray skies and relentless drizzle. Kavya's second semester had started with promise. Her engineering professors praised her innovative project designs, and her grades remained impeccable despite everything else falling apart. But the academic success felt hollow when every achievement was shadowed by Marcus's increasing demands for her time and attention. The texts had become constant, arriving at all hours with the persistence of a digital leash. Good morning, beautiful. What are you wearing today? Would arrive at 6 a.m., followed by who are you sitting with at lunch? At noon. And send me a photo of where you are right now by evening. Marcus had gifted her a new iPhone, supposedly an upgrade, but Kavya suspected it came with tracking capabilities she didn't fully understand. Her locations seemed to be always known, her movements always monitored. Sarah, her roommate, was the first to notice the changes. You never go out anymore, she observed one evening as Kavya declined yet another invitation to join classmates at a nearby club. And you're always looking over your shoulder like someone's watching you. Sarah's concern deepened when expensive packages began arriving daily. Designer clothes, jewelry, electronics, all with notes signed M and instructions about when to wear or use each item. Where is all this stuff coming from? Sarah asked, holding up a Cartier watch that cost more than most students' entire semester expenses. Kavya, who is sending you all this? Just a family friend, Kavya lied, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. Someone who knew my father back in India. He's successful here and wants to help. But the lie felt transparent, even to herself. Family friends didn't demand daily photos or become angry when their gifts weren't worn according to precise specifications. The breaking point began on Valentine's Day, when Marcus surprised her at campus with an elaborate display that humiliated her in front of her engineering cohort. He arrived at her advanced calculus class with a massive bouquet of red roses and a string quartet, insisting that she leave her midterm exam early to accept his romantic gesture. Professor Williams, a stern woman who valued academic dedication above all else, watched with obvious disapproval as Kavya reluctantly gathered her things and left the classroom with Marcus's possessive arm around her waist. That was my most important exam, Kavya protested once they were alone in his BMW. Professor Williams, specifically, said there would be no makeup opportunities. Marcus's response was swift and cold. Your education is important, sweetheart, but not more important than showing appreciation when someone loves you. I've invested considerable time and money in our relationship. The least you can do is prioritize me when I make a special effort. That evening, an exclusive restaurant where Marcus had reserved the entire private dining room. His behavior escalated beyond anything Kavya had previously experienced. He insisted she wear a specific red dress he had purchased, along with matching jewelry, and he photographed her throughout the meal with an intensity that felt more like documentation than affection. When she tried to check her phone to see messages from worried classmates about the missed exam, Marcus snatched the device away. "When you're with me, I expect your complete attention," he said, his voice carrying a threatening undertone that made other diners glance in their direction. "I don't pay for your lifestyle, so you can ignore me in favor of people who don't matter." The word pay hung in the air like a weapon, finally articulating what their relationship had become. Kavya wasn't a girlfriend being supported by a caring partner. She was an employee who had failed to read the terms of her contract. The realization hit her with such force that she excused herself to the restroom and immediately began searching for escape routes. In the marble-appointed bathroom, Kavya called the campus crisis helpline, her voice shaking as she tried to explain her situation to a counselor who seemed out of her depth. "I'm in a relationship with someone who's financially supporting me, but I want to leave, and he won't let me," she whispered into her phone. "He tracks my location, monitors my activities, and becomes violent when I don't comply with his demands." The counselor's response was well-intentioned, but inadequate. "Have you tried having an honest conversation with him about your boundaries? Sometimes these situations can be resolved through clear communication." Kavya almost laughed at the suggestion. Marcus had moved far beyond the realm where a reasonable conversation could provide solutions. Over the following weeks, Kavya began planning her escape with a methodical precision she applied to her engineering projects. She opened a secret bank account using her student ID, slowly transferring small amounts from the allowance Marcus provided. She researched emergency housing options for students, investigated restraining order procedures, and began rebuilding connections with classmates she had neglected. But Marcus's surveillance network was more sophisticated than she had realized. Within days of opening the secret account, he confronted her with printouts of the transactions. "Planning something, sweetheart?" he asked with deceptive calm, standing in her dorm room despite the fact that she had never given him access. "I'm disappointed. After everything I've done for you, this feels like betrayal." Sarah witnessed this confrontation from their shared kitchenette, and later that evening, she begged Kavya to involve campus security. "This isn't normal," she insisted, showing Kavya photos she had secretly taken of Marcus lurking outside their dormitory building at various hours. "He's stalking you. This is criminal behavior." Kavya's attempt to break things off came during what Marcus had planned as a romantic weekend getaway to his beach house in Malibu. Instead of the grateful compliance he expected, Kavya confronted him with a carefully rehearsed speech about needing space and independence. "I'm grateful for everything you've done," she said, standing near the ocean-facing windows of his luxury home. "But I need to focus on my studies without distractions." Marcus's reaction was swift and terrifying. He grabbed her wrist with enough force to leave bruises and pushed her against the window. "Distractions?" he snarled. "I've given you everything. A lifestyle your family could never provide, opportunities your little scholarship never would have afforded, and protection in a country where you're nobody without someone like me." The mask of genteel sophistication completely fell away, revealing the predator that had always lurked beneath. "You belong to me now," he continued, his grip tightening. "Every dress you wear, every meal you eat, every breath you take is because I allow it. You don't get to just walk away." That weekend, Kavya learned the full extent of Marcus's power and paranoia. He had been recording their conversations, had investigated her family back in Mumbai, and had even contacted UCLA administrators with false concerns about her mental stability and suspicious financial activities. He showed her a folder thick with documentation designed to destroy her academic career and immigration status if she ever tried to leave him. The drive back to campus was conducted in terrifying silence, Marcus's hand resting possessively on her thigh while she stared out at the Pacific Coast Highway and wondered if she would ever see another sunset. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I hope this weekend has helped clarify your priorities, Naya. Because there are consequences for making me unhappy. Serious consequences that extend far beyond just you." Back in her dorm room that Sunday night, Kavya sat on a narrow bed and stared at her reflection in the dark window. She had come to America to build a future, but somewhere along the way, she had traded that future for survival. Now she wasn't sure she would live long enough to regret the choice. March arrived with a false promise of spring, but for Kavya, each day felt like descending deeper into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Marcus's control had tightened into something suffocating and absolute. He had moved beyond psychological manipulation into outright surveillance, hiring a private investigator to monitor her movements and installing tracking software on her devices without her knowledge. The breaking point came when Kavya discovered Marcus had been intercepting her communications with her family. Her mother's worried voice messages, asking why Kavya's calls had become so brief and infrequent, never reached her phone. Instead, Marcus had been responding to her family's concerns with carefully crafted emails, maintaining the fiction that their daughter was thriving academically while being too busy for regular contact. "You were confusing them with your emotional instability," Marcus explained when Kavya confronted him about the deception. "I simplified things. Now, they think you're focused and successful, which is what they wanted to hear anyway." His casual dismissal of her family connections felt like another piece of her identity being systematically erased. Sarah had moved out of their shared dorm room in February, too frightened by Marcus's increasingly frequent uninvited visits and his hostile questioning about Kavya's daily activities. "I can't watch this anymore," she told Kavya during their final conversation. "He's going to hurt you, and I can't be here when it happens." Her departure left Kavya completely isolated, exactly as Marcus had intended. The financial trap had become total. Marcus controlled every aspect of Kavya's economic existence, from her rent payments to her meal allowances. When she tried to return to the campus library job she had held before their arrangement began, Marcus contacted her supervisor with fabricated concerns about her reliability and emotional stability, ensuring she would never be rehired. Every avenue of independence was systematically closed off. By mid-March, Kavya's academic performance had collapsed under the strain. She missed crucial lab sessions when Marcus demanded her presence at his business events, where he would parade her as his possession while maintaining the fiction that she was a family friend's daughter he was mentoring. Her professors noticed her decline, but interpreted it as typical international student stress rather than the systematic destruction of a young woman's autonomy. The violence began subtly, a grip that lingered too long, a push that seemed almost accidental, bruises that could be explained away as clumsiness. But Marcus's rage was escalating, particularly when Kavya failed to display sufficient gratitude for his generosity. He began timing her responses to his messages, becoming furious if she took longer than 15 minutes to reply regardless of her circumstances. On March 18th, Kavya made a desperate decision that would seal her fate. She created a secret social media account and began documenting Marcus's abuse, planning to use the evidence to seek help from law enforcement. She photographed her bruises, recorded threatening voicemails, and compiled financial records showing the pattern of control and coercion that had defined their relationship. Marcus discovered the account within hours. His technology expert had been monitoring her online activity more thoroughly than she had realized, and her attempt at creating evidence against him was interpreted as the ultimate betrayal. That evening, when he arrived at her dorm room, his usual mask of civilized authority had completely dissolved into something terrifying and primitive. "You ungrateful little whore," he snarled, cornering her near the window. "After everything I've invested in you, this is how you repay me? By trying to destroy my reputation with lies." His voice carried a murderous rage that made Kavya's blood freeze. She realized, perhaps too late, that Marcus had moved beyond controlling her life into planning to end it. The final text message Kavya would ever send was typed with shaking fingers at 11:54 p.m. on March 20th, as Marcus pounded on her door with increasing violence. "Please stop," she wrote to a campus security number she had found online, but the message would go unnoticed until investigators discovered it hours later on her phone, which lay shattered beside her lifeless body in a room that had become her tomb. The call came LAPD at 6:23 a.m. on March 21st from a maintenance worker who had found Kavya's door ajar, her lifeless body visible through the crack. Officer Jennifer Martinez was the first to arrive at the Westwood dormitory, and what she discovered in room 314 would haunt her for years afterward. Kavya lay crumpled near the window, her engineering textbooks scattered across the floor like broken dreams, her phone shattered against the wall with that final, desperate message still glowing on the cracked screen. Within hours, the investigation had zeroed in on Marcus Reed. Kavya's laptop yielded a digital trail of terror, thousands of threatening messages, financial records showing complete economic control, and the secret documentation she had been compiling before her death. Her browser history told the story of a young woman desperately searching for escape routes from a relationship that had become her prison. Marcus's arrogance proved to be his downfall. Security cameras throughout Westwood had captured his BMW arriving at 11:30 p.m. and leaving at 12:47 a.m., a timeline that perfectly matched the coroner's estimated time of death. More damning still, Marcus had used his credit cards at a nearby gas station just minutes after leaving Kavya's dormitory, apparently believing his wealth and connections would shield him from consequences as they always had before. Detective Sarah Kim, who led the investigation, found Marcus at his Century City office 2 days later, calmly conducting business as if nothing had happened. "He actually seemed surprised that we were arresting him," she later testified. Like he genuinely believed that killing a young immigrant woman wouldn't have real consequences for someone of his status. The trial became a media sensation that exposed the dark underbelly of exploitation hiding behind Los Angeles' glamorous facade. Prosecutor Angela Rodriguez built her case methodically, presenting evidence of months of systematic abuse, financial coercion, and escalating violence. Marcus Reed didn't just murder Kavya Sharma, Rodriguez argued in her opening statement. He murdered her slowly, piece by piece, until only her fear remained. Marcus's defense team attempted to paint Kavya as a willing participant who had seduced an older man for financial gain, but the evidence obliterated their narrative. Text messages revealed Marcus's violent threats. Financial records showed his complete control over her survival, and testimony from Sarah Chun described Kavya's terror in her final weeks. Most powerfully, the prosecution played Kavya's own voice recordings, made secretly on her phone, capturing Marcus's escalating abuse and her desperate pleas for him to let her leave. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts: first-degree murder, stalking, financial coercion, and human trafficking. As the verdict was read, Kavya's mother, Sunita, who had traveled from Mumbai despite her limited resources, wept quietly in the front row, clutching the silver pendant she had given her daughter at the airport, the same pendant found in Kavya's hand when her body was discovered. Judge Patricia Wells sentenced Marcus to life in prison without the possibility of parole, her words echoing through the packed courtroom. "You preyed upon a young woman's vulnerability, exploited her dreams, and ultimately took her life when she dared to seek freedom. The court finds your actions represent the most callous form of predation, wrapped in the disguise of generosity." The case sparked nationwide conversations about the dangers facing international students and the predatory relationships that trap vulnerable young people in cycles of abuse. UCLA implemented new safety protocols, established emergency housing for at-risk students, and created the Kavya Sharma Memorial Scholarship for engineering students facing financial hardship. Sarah Chun, now a software engineer in Silicon Valley, became an advocate for international student safety. "Kavya came here with so much hope," she said during a campus memorial service. "She deserved to build the future she dreamed of, not to become a victim of someone who saw her desperation as an opportunity." Today, visitors to UCLA's engineering building will find a small plaque near the library entrance, in memory of Kavya Sharma, whose brilliance was silenced too soon. May her story protect others who dare to dream. But perhaps the most fitting memorial is the network of support systems her death helped create: crisis counseling, financial aid programs, and legal protections that ensure no other young woman faces the choice between survival and safety alone. Marcus Reed remains in California State Prison, his real estate empire dissolved, his name now synonymous with predation rather than success. Kavya Sharma, meanwhile, is remembered not as a victim, but as a brilliant young woman whose death demanded justice and whose story continues to save lives by exposing the deadly reality behind America's promise of opportunity.